So probably most everyone has taken a survey before. So what is a survey? A survey is just a method of collecting information. That information is called data. So usually, those surveys are questionnaires, whether it's online over the telephone or just on a piece of paper. And so the information collected, whether it's numbers or facts, that's called data, and that's what people want. Now, why do people want it? Well, usually it's so that they can market something, so they can sell something, or sometimes so they can make something better. Where do we want to put a stoplight or a stop sign? And that's information gathered from information taken from traffic. So that's not a questionnaire. But whether or not the city you live in wants to build a rec center or include a pool or bowling alley, I mean, people want to know that so that they can provide those opportunities. So if someone's going to ask, if they want to build a bowling alley or a pool or whatever, what they have to do is they first have to consider who the population is. So I say that population is everyone or everything that is being considered or who would be affected. And the reason you want to make sure you know who your population is if you're not sure who your population is, you're not going to get a very good sample. So a sample is a portion of the population. Now you don't have to choose a sample. You could ask everyone in the population. If you ask everyone in the population, what you collect is a census. And the data you collect from every member of the population in this census would then be a parameter. Now, if a sample is used, and usually it's for time and money purposes, is really expensive to do a census and extremely time consuming. So if you use a sample, you want a couple of things. So a sample, the information that you get from a sample is called a statistic. And then of course we use that statistic or those statistics to make an estimate or prediction about the parameter or about the entire population. Now it still takes a lot of time and money to ask even a sample. So when you give a survey to a sample, you want that sample to be representative of the population. Otherwise you can't make an accurate prediction about the population. And so the best sample is a random sample. And to be a true random sample, every member of the population must have an equal chance of being selected. And that's really what it comes down to. So anytime you're asked if something is a random sample, you just have to ask yourself, did every member of the population have an equal chance of being selected? So, sometimes I talk about the Hunger Games with the students and how that one wasn't random, even though they put all their names into that big, vat, and then, they pulled out numbers randomly. Did everyone have an equal chance of being selected? And we know they didn't. Different people had their names in there different numbers of times, so that is not a true random sample. So let me give you an example where I can try to use all of this vocabulary. One year I gave a bully survey to the junior high. We were interested in knowing, what kind of bullying was going on or where it was happening or how often, things like that. So, what was the population? Some might answer that the population was the entire junior high school. Well, is it really the entire junior high school? Think of everyone in the junior high. Did I really want to give everyone in the junior high an opportunity to be chosen for the survey? Well, no. I'm really not interested in any of the adults, really. Now, they might have important information as well, but this survey was specifically for the students. So my population was every student in the junior high. So in order to give everyone an equal chance, or every student in the junior high an equal chance of being selected, I went to the counselors and asked for a list of every single student in the school, and they gave it to me in an Excel program, so they were even numbered. So now how do I randomly select those students? Well, in our probability section, we learned how to use a random number generator or a random number table. And I used a random number table to randomly select 100 students. So that was the sample. So once the 100 students were chosen, I had the counselors help me send an invitation to them to take the survey, and then they took the survey, and then the information we collected about that survey was a statistic, or were statistics, because it described the sample. Now, since it was a random survey, we could make the assumption that it represented or accurately represented the population, and we were able to talk about ways to improve the school. Another thing that we want to talk about is, does a sample appropriately or accurately represent the population? If I had just asked all the basketball players, had them take the bully survey, no, that wouldn't have worked. Or even if I had just gone into an art classroom and asked the students. Anytime you choose a group that are a group because of a certain characteristic, it's not random, and it's most likely not going to accurately represent the population. Now, one thing to be careful about is if you do a random sample, you use a random number generator or a random number table and randomly select your sample, and it just so happens that every single person from the basketball team happens to be in that sample, it's still a random sample because every single student had an equal chance of being chosen. If I just decide to ask the basketball team, now everybody in the school didn't have an equal chance. Everyone in the population didn't have an equal chance of being chosen. If it so happens that every single person chosen is a girl, well, it doesn't seem like that would very accurately represent the population, but it is a random sample. So getting a random sample or answering the question, is the sample random? All you have to ask yourself, and I want you to remember this, all you have to ask yourself is, did every member of the population have an equal chance of being selected? Because they will ask you, is the following sample a random sample? As long as every member of the population had an equal chance of being selected, it is random. Now, it may so happen that that random sample turns out to not be a representative sample. Again, if only girls are chosen just randomly, that's what happens, then it may not accurately represent the population. What they found, though, is if you do a random sample, almost every time it is extremely close to being accurate to representing the population.